computer. Okay, now let me do the shares. Okay. So, last week we were talking about Genesis 38. We talked about Judah and Tamar, and we talked about their family, situation. And this is what I wanted to do last week, but then I kind of got the feeling that not enough people knew the story of Judah and Tamar. And it always helps um, to know the story. So just as a just as a quick review, what does that say? Set up professional.
You Paul Harvey, you're gonna tell the rest of
Gonna
the
tell
story.
gonna tell the rest of the story. Yeah. So, pardon?
Yeah, Paul Harvey.
Yeah. Anyway, so well, what's really funny? You hear about the rest of the story. I haven't seen it. I don't have Netflix. Anybody have Netflix? Has anybody seen I don't know if they've started it, the show they're going to show on Mary? Anybody know about that? Well, anyway, what I heard is that it starts out with like a narration from Mary saying something to the effect of, I know you've heard the story, but you haven't heard my story.
Right.
And then that's where the movie's going to take off. And we know that other than maybe her name and the name of some of the other characters, they're going to make it all up because we know the story of Mary. We know everything that the Bible said about Mary. So when we say, like Andy was saying, am I going to tell the rest of the story? I guess I could go on and on about the rest of the story. But what I wanted to anyway, so just to refresh about the story, okay, was that Judah, um, uh, one of the 12 sheiks of the tribes of Israel. They'd be like sheiks, it's just like a chief and all that. But anyway, that he separated from his brothers. This was after the taking of Joseph. He marries a woman, has three boys by him, marries off the first boy to Tamar, and uh, and God kills him. Not for marrying Tamar, but it says that he was wicked, and God killed him. And then, so according to the Levirate law, is that the second brother supposed to take the widow of the first brother, give her a child, so that one, she has a child, but two, that there's an heir to the brother's estate. This brother doesn't do it. For this reason, God did state why he was wicked and killed him. Okay. And then the third brother, who was too young at the time, was promised to her. Judah never came across on the promise. Um, anyway, so then his wife died. He went off to town on business, his sheep shearing business. He went off to town, and Tamar took off her widow's clothes, put on her veil, went to town, sat at the gate of the city. And when Judah showed up, he thought she was a prostitute. Went through all these shenanigans. She ends up by getting pregnant. And some of this we'll cover a little bit as I go through this. But anyway, then she has two children. So that's kind of, as Andy would say, the rest of the story, or the story retold. So my cover here is the Old Testament culture of family versus modern thoughts and customs. And this is what we need to train ourselves to do, is to think in their thought, in their custom, which is almost impossible to do. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's almost impossible to do. But we have to get away from thinking modern thoughts the way that we do it, because we would probably say, well, if they didn't have these stupid customs, they wouldn't have had these problems, and life would have gone on very well. But that is their customs. So we want to understand the Bible in the best way that we can, to understand who those people are. And I think I said this last week, because all the Old Testament, all the people that we see, all the stories that we read about, all of the the good stuff, the bad stuff. Like Pastor said today, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. All this leads up to, well, one, it leads up to the genealogy and the family of Jesus, but it also leads up to the times that Jesus was born into and the culture he was born into and what it was that he drew from, like when he was giving examples of things or he's giving, talks and sermons on things and he's reaching back into the past, but then we hear them when we put them into 21st century, you know, um, thoughts. Anyway, but the problems that we have are these barriers. It's a long time ago in a place that we're unfamiliar with. Pardon? A land far, far away. That's right. And these people, they live different, they dress different, they eat differently. Just everything they do is different from what we do and what we're, used to. So we want to close that, gap a little bit. You think about it, um, if you go to we don't think much about our culture. I mean, we just kind of live in it, like fish living in water. They don't know they're in water. We live in this Western culture, and we think that everybody lives the way that we live. We think that they eat tacos like we eat tacos, and but we find out people don't live like, you go to a foreign country or um, go to California. I threw that in. I threw that in for Joe. You know, yeah. No, but I mean, you go to a farm and you go, wow, this is really weird. I mean, one thing I got out of when I went in the Army, and I was in the National Guard. So I was a California boy. And, when you're in the National Guard and you go to basic training, you go by yourself. It's not like you go through an induction center or, I had to buy a plane ticket that they paid for eventually. But I mean, I had to get a plane ticket. I had to fly up to Fort Lewis in Washington and say, here I are, and then get assimilated in. But I was a Southern California boy, grew up in the 60s, probably spoiled rotten, the whole thing. My company in Washington for basic training was made up of an induction center out of Alabama. And you got all these 17-year-old draftees from Alabama, which isn't like Orange County in Southern California. The other half was from an induction center in Chicago, and they were almost all black. A couple of them, seriously, a couple of them showed up with gunshot wounds in their legs. May have been self-inflicted to get out. I don't know. But I'm talking, you're talking just a different culture. And I just had to like, mommy, no. No, but you find out, no, and that was one, like I say, that was one good thing about the military was that you meet people that come from different parts of the country that do not live like you. And so that's what we're trying to get around. So, this happens, long, long time ago. So, and then we become pretty ethnocentric, big word, in that we think we're the right ones. We only think the way we think. Probably we have probably enough in common in this room that there's probably very little that we could mention that everybody here wouldn't understand, just because we all kind of grew up at the same time period, grew up in America, whatever it is.
Except some of you are young pups.
That's right. That's right. Like I was just born later than you. No, but we no, but we do, and so we think not only do we think that our culture is, I mean, we think it's the best. If everybody just had our culture, I think we've tried that with taking over countries and colonizing and stuff like that. So, but here I want to show you on a slide here. Okay, how we do this. Believe me, I'll get around to Boaz and tomorrow, but I'll get around to Jesus in the New Testament also. So who's this?
Christ.
That's not a trick question, in case you thought it was. Huh? Yeah, but it's Jesus. It's the Sacred Heart, of Jesus. But this is the Jesus that we have. Look, I mean, if you look close enough, I don't know how well you guys all see in the back there, but yeah, he's got brown hair, kind of like blonde highlights. He's Caucasian, got a nice trimmed beard, you know, and to us, because that's our Jesus. We make Jesus to, our culture. Look at it. Here's another one, you know. Now, um, this one's it's Jesus in Gethsemane, But look, I mean, first of all, his hair's nice and washed. I don't know how often they washed their hair back then. But he's kind of a thin guy, but I don't know if you can see his hands. I don't know how to zoom this in. I don't know if you can see his hands. His hands look like piano player hands. They do. I mean, they're soft. Pardon?
Not that or a carpenter.
Well, seeing that's the thing. We would expect that well, before we get into some of the other stuff, we would expect with his hands, that he's a carpenter. He's a carpenter, a stone worker. The words, are interchangeable. But he worked for his dad as a kid, like all Jewish kids would in a patriarchal society. So you would expect his hands to be rough, cut up, maybe missing a finger, you know, like that. I mean, those kinds of, you would, you would. You would expect him. Now, you got to remember, even in his later life, he's 3 years as an itinerant preacher walking in the sun for 3 years. You would expect him to have that baked on skin, that he would be, that it would be dark. We don't have that Jesus. Maybe he'd look more like this. This is an anthropologist drawing of what a Jesus type person, a man in the Middle East, they say would look like. Okay. I'm guessing maybe this guy's 5'5". I do anyway. We picture Jesus kind of towering over the people as he spreads his arms to speak. And, maybe he looked like this guy and he's 5'5" and, he's, all his knuckles have been broken and, you know, we don't know, but this is probably closer. I've got this one here, and I said, will the real Jesus please stand up? Which is closer to, which is closer to to the Jesus that, that we would have. Um, Pardon?
Right. It's more like. No, is how our version of.
Oh, no, right. That's our version, but see, why are our Jesus's pictures all skinny white guys? Because our artists were probably skinny white guys.
He had the power, and he was a perfect person, so he could be anything he wanted to.
Right. No, well, you're right, but we have to be a little bit careful in that in this part, he's fully man. He's fully God and he's fully man. And in his man, he's fully man like his ancestors, like his ancestors would be. And it doesn't matter which one he looks like, because I'm telling you, you go to Asia, their Jesus is Asian, Denny.
In your research, when was the first painting of Christ?
Oh, I didn't look that up, but I imagine that there's some that probably go back to the 3rd, 4th century, because that's when they started to build church buildings, but I don't know. And then we don't know how closely the people held to make no graven images. Did they still consider that to be, an image that you wouldn't want the people to worship? Doesn't matter which picture it is, but What are you gonna say? Make sure your microphones are on, okay? I know Ray didn't turn them on, so turn on your microphone if you haven't.
In the TV series The Chosen, I think they've done Jesus up quite well.
Yeah.
What we expect.
Right, he looks Middle
With the
Eastern.
clothing and everything else that goes with it. He fits in with the disciples, the dark hair,
Yeah.
tan, very tan.
Yeah.
He looks Arabic,
Yes.
very much so.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job with it.
Yeah, and he also seems to be one of the guys, because we always picture, I do anyway, I guess I'm projecting that you do too, is that, we always picture of Jesus being a little bit holier than the others. And so, that glow keeps him from really fitting in at the dance hall, No, but yeah, on The Chosen, from what I've seen, he seems to be like one of the guys. He's just one of the guys. Like if you probably had the whole group there and you said which one is Jesus, you wouldn't say, well, the one that's glowing like the light bulb. You wouldn't be able to pick him out, Ray.
So we talked about different cultural environment and different beliefs. On Friday, I had a Jehovah's Witness show up at my door. My wife ran to the bedroom and just answered the door. So I went outside and I said, "You're with Jehovah's Witness," because he had his little sapling with him. And normally they travel in twos, but he was by himself. So I had a conversation with him, you believe what you believe, and I believe what I believe. I'm a Lutheran, Missouri Synod, and we can chit chat here back and forth, but you're not going to convince me, and I'm not going to convince you either. So, we had a nice conversation about 25, 30 minutes long, and he kept shaking, his legs were shaking from one side to the other. So I said, he must be getting tired of me talking, so, because I did a lot of talking, and all he could say was, read Isaiah 51. Okay.
He said that?
He told me to read Isaiah 51.
Did you?
His part of the conversation.
Yeah.
You need to read this because this will change your religion or your belief.
Did you read it?
No.
51, 5-1.
5-1.
Who's read it?
What's that?
Who has read it?
I know Isaiah 53.
I read 53 and 41.
Yeah, 53 and 41 probably counteract. I wonder what it does say. Well, what's that?
Go ahead.
Okay, he's gonna look. Just let us know if it says anything really pertinent.
I will.
Okay. And no, I'm serious. I mean, if it says, "I, the Lord," oh, maybe that's the one that says there are no other gods besides me, or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, okay, look, I've got another picture because this again is going to show how we change to our culture. So, who knows what this picture is?
Last Supper.
Huh? Last Supper, right. But this is in, let me see, where is this one? This is in a cathedral in Cusco in Lima, Peru. Okay? So they're around the Last Supper and all that, and they're doing the Passover meal. And can anybody see what's on the platter? Can you see it well enough?
Fish.
It's like a lizard.
Looks like a frog.
It's before I tell you what it is, see, they don't eat lamb, especially for a holiday or something like. I don't eat lamb anytime, but anyway, but they don't eat lamb for a holiday and stuff like that. They have their own delicacy that they eat. Now, before I tell you what it is, but they have projected this into their culture. Well, the painter did anyway. Whoever the painter. What's that?
Leonardo.
No, that's not Leonardo. He didn't. Well, he did. Well, this, I think somebody else here did a Last Supper also. Okay, that's a guinea pig.
Really?
Because they don't hold the guinea pig sacred, but it's a delicacy, for them. But they have no problem, even though the Bible probably says, that you're going to take a lamb and you're going to slaughter it and you're going to, cook it up and, eat it. They still don't have a problem. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I mean, I'm just saying, but culturally, they say, I think the people will understand it better maybe if we present this picture in this setting with what's important to us. like that. Well, man, think about it. We're almost Christmas, right? And all of our Christmas movies and scenes are happening at winter time, and it's Santa Claus, and snow is falling and stuff. What do the people in Australia do? Well, they don't do any. Now that's just custom. That's not biblical, I think. Is it okay to say Santa Claus isn't biblical? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, they have to do it a whole different, way. Their Christmas songs are probably sung by Jimmy Buffett, as they're still out on the beach and and stuff like that. So anyway, so this is what's happening. This is what's happening here. Again, it's cultural, and it's just that. See, I don't even know in our culture or their culture or anybody's culture, can we revert back to, we go, okay, that was just cultural. Let's go back and find out what the Bible lets us know in the times, in the geographic areas, with the customs they have. And I'm going to put my whole mind when I read a Bible story in that. It's probably too late to try to do it. You probably have to start with the young kids and start bringing them up that way. I don't know. So let me see. So anyway, so the thing is that as we move through the culture, this is where Genesis 38 is, and trying to understand their culture, their family units. Why were their families run the way that they were run? And we've got, well, wait, before I get to that, it's our culture is bureaucratic, okay? Our culture, I'm just going to read this. We are a state-based culture. It's the state that produces economic opportunity. It's the state that protects its citizens. It's the state that cares for the marginalized. So if you were to, lose your job Monday morning, the first thing you would do in our culture is you would file unemployment. Okay. Yeah. So if it got really bad, you might wind up down at the welfare office, looking for food stamps, looking for Medicaid, because we have a safety net and we have this whole bureaucratic system to do it. And like that isn't what they had, you know. What Israel had was a tribal culture, and so the tribes are set up. And I tried to make up a chart for this, but I couldn't. But figure concentric circles, kind of like a bullseye thing. And in the center, you're going to have the family, okay? And then the circle out from that, you're going to have the clan. Just kind of like close related, people. And then the circle outside that, you're going to have the tribe. Think Indians, Native Americans. I mean, they're that exact same kind of a culture. So you have the tribes. So we have the 12 tribes of Israel. And the circle outside of that is the nation. So you have the family, the clan, the tribes that make up the nation Israel. Okay? And that's the way their system is set up. And so it's up to, that the kinsmen take care of each other. The people in the families are responsible for the care for the people. This is what's going to lead into Judah and how he handled it improperly. Like that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe everybody handled it improperly. I mean, we all do, on things like that. So, I mean, I don't want to make him like a wicked, on purpose kind of wicked guy. We fall short in the way that we're supposed to, do things. So, if you were racing down, the nation's highway, in your Volkswagen going 85 miles an hour, the gendarme, the cop, is going to stop you. You're going to see the blue lights flashing. He's going to get out. He's going to tell you the error of your way, going to remind you of the law, and he's going to give you a piece of paper that is when you have to appear in court because the state is going to take care of the discipline problem. Okay. Now, if you were going down the highway, 85 miles an hour on your camel, yeah, no, they'd call your dad, okay, and that your dad would beat the snot out of you, you know, and if your dad didn't beat the snot out of you, they'd call the uncle, you know, and if he couldn't beat the snot out of you to get you to change, they'd haul you outside the city and stone you to death. The family, the clan, the tribe, whatever, took care of the problem. On the other side, if you were in need, the clan, the family, the tribe would take care of your needs. Okay. So it's a patriarchal society. What we have, I gotta find my pointer. So a patriarchal society is authority within the household. The authority within the household belongs to the oldest living male. Yay, guys. No. The immediate family is the father's household. So when it says the father's household, that means for all the family members. The patriarch is the center of the household. Both authority and responsibility belong to the oldest living male. And again, this is in Genesis 38, where Judah and Tamar fall into this culture. Remember, it was Judah went to his wife's father to get the wife. We saw that with Isaac and with Jacob, that the fathers sent the guy out to find a wife for the son. And that's the way that it was done, because that's what he was responsible. That's what he was responsible for. And then Judah did the same with his son Er, went and found a wife for him, Tamar. And then when Er died, he provided Onan to do the Levirate marriage, and he failed. And then he promised for the other son, I forget the other son's name, but to do it. And then he failed to deliver on that. Okay. And then we saw in there that he told Tamar to go live in her father's household until it was time for the son to be old enough. And see, he wasn't supposed to do that. She's part of his family now, and he is supposed to give her the covering and the protection and whatever. So he let that, get out. So anyway, so a patriarchal society is where the men are in charge, but it's not just to be in charge. You have responsibilities for what to do. Next thing we have here is called patrilineal. The patra part is the male thing, patriarchal. It's ancestral descent. I can't get my I want to get my picture out of the way. Okay. Ancestral descent, land and inheritance is traced through the male line. Okay, and this is important, especially, I don't think it's just in Israel. I think it's all for all the people in those areas at that time. So genealogies become important. Okay. And if you look at the genealogies, they're all male. It's just male. The only time that women are mentioned is that if somebody has multiple wives, poor soul, no. Anyway, has multiple wives, and they're trying to point out which wife's heirs, male heirs, are in the line of the inheritance. That's the only time that women are mentioned in the, in the genealogies. So what's their primary resources that they're trying to protect? Land and children. I mean, that's all that they've got. I don't know if that makes life simpler or what. You know, on the one hand, you're working hard, you're probably starving to death half the time. But in the same token, yeah, tomorrow morning I got to take my car to the shop, because my engine light came on. So, I don't want I got to get dressed, put my shoes on, and so you don't know why, which is, I told you I was spoiled. Like, so, let's see. Um, so the land and the children, and then we talked about that Levirate law, which is in Deuteronomy 25, that is where the brother has to provide for, at least to marry and to have children, at least a child with the widow. Like it's there in Deuteronomy, 25. It's part of the law. It's the way that God is protecting his people in a time that when you're living out in the wilderness. Think about it. If you found yourself living in the wilderness, so you and three other families, would you have the presence of mind to set up, wait a minute, we have to come up with a system to protect ourselves from each other, set up a system because we don't have the old system we came from isn't here. It doesn't apply it doesn't apply anymore. I can't call the cops. I can't go to the court. How are we going to do it? That's what God did with his law before the Ten Commandments and his law with the Ten Commandments. It's set up to protect the family and the property. Okay. So, and then you have inalienable land laws. Back then, you owned the land belonged to the tribe of so and so who distributed it to his descendants, and it went through inheritance. It was the only way that people transferred land. I can tell you, there wasn't a single real estate agent in the 12 tribes of, of Israel.
Were Israelites originally not allowed to have land?
What's that? No,
Israelites.
they were given the land when they entered
Well, they were given the land as a nation, but not individual.
Well, again, it goes back to the family, the clan, the tribe, as far as who. This room here is of the tribe of Rick. And here's your ancestors. Okay. Now, I don't know. Here's one thing, and I couldn't figure this out, is how they divide up who the oldest living male is, because does everybody live together forever and ever?
Probably.
Well, maybe in a lot of cases, but forever and ever, we don't. We see here Judah left, at the very first verse in 38, it said he separated himself from. Again, we only know what the Bible tells us. We don't know any of the other things. God tells us what's important. But then when you see people doing things, you say, well, they're doing it outside of that. So that must be the way that they do it. But the point is that you kept your land. I mean, you have to be in really deep, to have to get rid of your land. And even if you were impoverished, it's up to the family to bail you out. Like that, and not to give it to some Jebusite or, whatever. And even if they had to get rid of their land, every 50 years was the year of Jubilee, and the property reverted back to the original family. Again, that was something that kept people out of perpetual poverty, to be able to do that. Like we have bankruptcy laws, today. Bankruptcy laws were the answer to debtor's prison. You get in debtor's prison, how do you work off your debt? You're in prison. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and so it creates that issue. So bankruptcy court is the answer to debtor's prison. And so your jubilee would be an answer to this. Yeah.
Was the land theirs only while they resided on it, or?
Wait, say it again?
Was the land theirs only while they resided on it, or was the land theirs irregardless of whether they were on the land or not? Because they were taken into captivity in Babylon.
Right. They were
They were no longer there.
Well, wait, let's go back to they were taken into captivity in Egypt.
Okay.
But then the wilderness wanderings were all about taking them back to the land and then repopulating, the land. I don't think in Genesis here, I don't think we see a distribution of the land, okay, in that way. But when they come into the land, I mean, God's very particular in Joshua, how the land is divided.
That take place after,
Say it a little bit louder.
didn't that take place after Moses brought them and they went into the promised land?
Right.
And that when the land was divided among the 12
The way that we know it now, whether it was divided at all, back. You got to remember, we're just starting out with 12 brothers here. In Genesis, say when Jacob first started having kids, okay? And so, maybe we're 40, 50 years into, well, maybe a little bit more than that. Whatever it would take for Judah to get to adulthood, get married, have kids, and the kids grow up. That puts us there. So, what could the population be? 100, maybe. I don't remember the population that went into Egypt, when Joseph called for them to come live in Egypt. But what you're saying is, yeah, so when they came out of captivity from the Pharaoh times and crossed the desert, took 40 years to make a 1-month trip,
Those families could have changed some in those 40 years too.
Well, again, that's why they keep the genealogies. You got to think, here's how important the genealogies are. We won't finish this today, but this is how important the genealogies are today. When you read the genealogies after the flood, okay, when you're going into chapter 10, I think when they're going to build the Tower of Babel, I think before they do that, I think it gives the genealogies of the nation. Where did they get those from? I mean, we're talking after the flood. Where'd they get those from? My the thoughts of many others too. Because I told the many others. No, like that is that before the flood, Noah and his previous family all kept genealogies. And probably the last guy to go down with the flood who was faithful, or maybe somebody slipped him to Seth or somebody, who handed him off to Moses and he put him on the ark. And when they got off the ark, they had the genealogies. And the only reason that the story is told like that is to show how important the genealogies are. That's the way they kept record, because who's coming through that line of genealogies? Christ is. See, if it was just me, nobody would care. Now, whether they consciously know it or that's God's way of preserving it, the genealogy is important. So that when we get to Matthew, we go into the New Testament, page 1, you're reading about the genealogy, and it goes, it goes back. Andy.
They had a census in those days.
Well, they had the census in Jesus' day, because that's when the story opens.
Who knows how far back?
Rome did the census.
Rome did the census. Rome wasn't back around this time. Like that. See, I don't think consciously it was important to these people. I think God works it out so it was preserved. In Roman days, the census was important because, one, that's the way they counted their people, but also the way they collected their money, their taxes. Okay, so there it was conscious, it was done on, on purpose. Oh, Chris, I'm sorry, I missed your hand. Yeah.
I have a question regarding the genealogy, and specifically about the genealogy of Jesus. Um, the way I read the Bible, I think a story was in Luke. I'm maybe wrong, but anyway, uh, Jesus became part of the lineage of David through adoption because he became Joseph's son, and Joseph was from the house of David. And God told through the angel, God told Joseph that he was to take this child and raise him as his own. Am I wrong in that thinking?
Well, yeah, again, it's one of those things that the Bible doesn't say in the words that you presented it. And Jesus was, it doesn't even say he was grafted into the lineage. Paul talks about that, how the branch has been broken off, meaning Israel, and that the church has been grafted into that, into that root. Now, Mary, I think, was also from the lineage of David. Pardon? Yeah, Mary was also from the lineage of David. Uh, Joseph was through the lineage, I think, of David's son Solomon, and Mary was through David's son. I want to say Nathan, but I don't think that's it. But but anyway, they were from different, different sons. But what we want to do is not take away the miracle that God worked in the incarnation like that. I mean, if he wanted, see, I don't think you could do a DNA test, but if he wanted Jesus to be from the lineage of David, he made it so he's the lineage, of David, because God's the creator of all people. I mean, even if you go by lineage, he through Adam, and he made Eve. And
Mhm.
whoever comes afterwards, you know, is going to work through that same line. But it's again, it's like what I was telling somebody is we don't want to go further. I'm talking to you, Chris. We don't want to go further than what the text actually says. But you're right. It could have been that he was done by adoption. But that's not a bad thing because when we get to, and we won't get to it till next week, but when we get to Jesus's genealogies, that's where these women come in. You got Ruth, you got Rahab, you got Bathsheba, you've got Tamar, the one we're talking about. That they're in there where women don't belong, which means the author is shouting something at us, you know? And again, so that's what makes the genealogy of Jesus we're going to see is special. Anyway, so look, the last thing we got here is the patrilocal. The family unit or housing space is built around the oldest male. And again, the father's household is the family compound. I mean, I don't know if we see in our lifetimes, do we see families living in compounds? We saw hippies living in communes. Pardon?
Bin Laden.
Well, no, but see, back in the Middle East, you see kibbutzes in Israel,
Yeah.
where family units, still all live together. How tightly fixed that is, I don't know. People may come and go out of the kibbutz and, pardon?
They still have the Bedouin, the tribes that are still living out in tents.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, we don't know. We don't know how, closely, tied this was. And again, what I was saying is, so you got the father's house, his compound, and the family's living there. They know nothing about immediate family. They know nothing about, father, mother, 2.5 kids, dog, cat, in your 3,000 square foot, 5 bedroom, 3 bath house. They know nothing I mean, they absolutely, they know nothing about it. I don't even know if they have a word for it, you know? And so they live in that style. The only thing I got to try to figure out is, and I'll do this week, is try to figure out how did people leave their family? I mean, maybe dad just says, I gotta go. You know, it seems like when Abraham got called out of you are, in the Chaldees, which was Iraq, I think, like that, because he grew up in a pagan family and God called him out, which meant he was leaving his father. He was leaving everything. Now, he ended up by taking his dad. You know, he took his dad to the first town they came to, and he took his nephew Lot, you know. See, and these things may not have been good because he was just told to leave, you know, but he's kind of hanging on to, kind of hanging on to stuff. But he left. So there is a way that they get called out, but it's before this time, and it's before the time of the Exodus um, and the commandments and that. So we don't know. So say you're living with Judah, of course, Judah's older sons were kind of rare because God kept killing them. But if you took a regular family and you raised a family and you're all living in a commune and you get down to, okay, so dad dies. Now you got four brothers. Maybe they got 12 brothers, though, because they had a lot of kids back then. You got 12 brothers. So the oldest one is the one who's in charge. And all of them have taken wives and all of them have had kids. You know, did brother number six said, I'm striking out on my own. They probably did because they had to expand. We just don't read about it. See, that's the thing. We just don't read about it. But they probably left, set up their own household, and went through because son number six took his wife with him and his kids, the wife that his father had picked out for him. And then he left. So it's kind of like an approved family unit. And they go off and they go down by the river 2 miles and they set up their own compound there and start all over. We don't know. We don't want to get too far off. I want to keep this to where we can see what's going to happen with, Judah and Tamar. So anyway, so the father's household is the compound. The family collectively farms the land it jointly owns and shares its produce. Now I sent a drone out. Got a picture of a compound here. Well, so this is supposed to be what an Israelite family compound would look like. Now, I have no idea what they base it on, or whatever. But if you look at you've got the buildings. When we get into the buildings next week, I got some more pictures, but you got the buildings where the people lived, and you can fit a certain number. I think these are like 4 or 5 room houses, and they have a place inside to keep the animals, if they need to be in shelter. You see here, you see the women and children, and women are working, they're baking bread and grinding corn, whatever I go to Smith's. But see, if they had our culture, they would just go to Smith and they wouldn't need to be doing this stuff. But anyway, but they're doing that, and the men are out in the field. They're out, they're doing the farming, the ranching, the hunting. Like, yeah, you got to catch those guinea pigs. They're out doing that, but then they all gather. Notice there's a wall around it, And then I was saying, okay, that's a nice compound. Then I was thinking, wait, did they have that kind of stuff back in Genesis 38, though? Like that. So how would you know? How would you? I Googled. How else would you know? I Googled, well, I looked in Wikipedia because I said, when were the pyramids built? Because I'm thinking, shouldn't they be living in tents? Did they have stone buildings, back then? But see, it said that the pyramids were built around 2500 BC. And Jacob was around 1800 BC, which is after that. And then I thought, I didn't read this, but then I thought, well, wait a minute. Several years later, when they get taken into captivity in Egypt, what did Pharaoh make the Jews do? They were making bricks, and he said, we're taking away the straw to make it harder for you to build bricks. So they must have had, yeah, they probably weren't stucco and, stuff like that. But they had this. So this could have been, because I was trying to figure out, or was it like a circle of Indian tents? Like you see, they got but they do. They got a whole bunch of teepees. They probably have a mess tent or whatever, and whatever perimeter that they have. Dennis.
They must have a vineyard somewhere in the background because they drank more wine than that.
Yeah, no, yeah. No, in fact, there's some trees here. Those might be yeah. They may not be as primitive as we think, because a lot of times we think these are just people right out of caveman days. Yeah. So was somebody going to say something? Oh. Okay. Anyway, so okay, I'll tell you what. Let's end there. Trust me, this does work to Genesis 38, but it also goes to a little bit of Christmas and a little bit of Christ's ascension into heaven, based on this stuff. Because, and we'll finish that next. I mean, we'll finish next week. But the point is that when Jesus says something, is he pointing back to something that was real in Scripture that we don't understand? Like that. Well, think about this. Just chew on this. I'll give you a little preview. Chew on this, because what I said back here, when I say the Father's house, does that conjure up anything in the New Testament? Pardon? That's right. Yeah. Well, King James had many mansions, but yeah. So when Jesus says, "In my Father's house," yeah, but what is he talking about? He's probably talking about this. Hey, he's probably talking about this, or he's talking about, the other pictures that I'll have. Those kinds of things, point back to this. Okay. So we'll stop there. Is that beneficial? Hey, the main thing is that we start to think like we were living in their times. We could do a church pageant about this kind of stuff and put on their clothes and walk around with a lamb chop in our hand and and guinea pig in the other. But we can't think like them. That's the thing. That's what we want to train ourselves to do a little bit of, is to try to say, no, it's not this way. It's probably more this way. So, okay. Any last questions before we go? Okay, let's close with Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Very good.